Welcome everyone to Mutual Aid 101. My name is Tom Llewellyn, and I'm representing Shareable, the organization hosting today's event. If you're not familiar, for the past 15 years, collaborating with organizers and allies to imagine, resource, network, and scale cooperative projects. We've published over 4,500 stories about the ways that people are sharing resources around the world, and over 300 how-to guides to make it easier to do so. If you haven't already done so, we recommend checking out our Mutual Aid Toolkit. It's based on the first 4 sessions of the Mutual Aid 101 series that we held earlier this year, which includes Dean's Intro to Mutual Aid session. Also want to say this has been a really big week for Shareable. In addition to today's event, on Monday we released a 98-page electric cooperative organizing toolkit in partnership with the Rural Power Coalition. It has been designed to support the 42 million member owners of electric cooperatives in the US to better get involved in their co-ops and to advance energy democracy from coast to coast. The other thing that we happened to do this week is that we just launched our brand new website. We've been working on it for quite a while, made it a lot easier to access all of the tools that I mentioned earlier. We've got a lot of great resources there, and so encourage folks to take that for a spin when you get a chance. And finally, I just want to say, whether you've attended other Mutual Aid 101 sessions, used the toolkit, or this is your first time joining us, resources like this are only possible because of folks like you who donate to Shareable. We would like to thank everyone who made a contribution while registering for today's event. It really helps a lot to cover the cost to be able to put on large events like this. And if you haven't made a contribution, or if you'd like to make another one, to help us produce more resources, please use the link in the chat to make a $5, $10, or $50 donation. We wouldn't be able to do this work without you. All right, so we're gonna get started.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be invited back. I think it's really brilliant and useful, all the ways that Shareable is making mutual aid resources like available in so many formats that are so directly reaching people. And I'm really grateful to everybody who's here. And it's cute to see your reactions blossoming on the screen, and really wonderful to see everyone's where people are coming in from. So many people from all over. So cool. Before I forget, I want to share with you all in the chat just the last couple of months. In the last few, like 6 months or something, I launched a podcast. In the last couple of months, we launched a Patreon, which is free, and it's a place where we're sharing a lot of content about themes related to the stuff tonight, like to conflict, to working with people, having relationships that are sustainable in our movements. And it's a place where a lot of conversations are happening. People are meeting each other. That's a little like more intimate than social media. There's like not trolls there. So I'm finding it to be a good place for like sharing content that I wouldn't share like on Instagram and other more hostile spaces. So I wanted to put that there in case it's useful. Okay, I'm going to share my screen so that we can go into talking about these issues related to navigating conflict. I think this is probably something that other people are familiar with, but yeah, there's a lot of really intense conflict in our groups when we work together. It is my firm belief that if you do things that you care about with other people, you will experience conflict, and that's totally okay. And it doesn't mean anybody's doing anything wrong, but we live in a really conflict averse set of cultural norms, and some very like simple things can help us be a little more prepared to have conflict and to not end up leaving groups or leaving social movement work when we encounter conflict with other people. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight, is like some of the things that help. Yeah. So I want to say a few things about this. I'm going to be using slides, and I'm sometimes going to be asking people to participate in the chat, like answer a question, everybody in the chat. And I won't generally be looking at the chat the whole time because it's hard for me to look at it while I'm presenting and talking and looking at my slides. So I will miss things you say, and I trust that the Shareable people will tell me if there's something I need to see. But if you are in a situation where you don't want to participate in the chat, that's fine. I will read aloud selected responses. So like if you just need to listen and not look at a screen because of access needs or because you're tired of screens, like you won't miss, like you'll still be able to participate in the workshop even if you aren't looking at your screen or looking at the chat. I'm going to read what's on my slides too. So like you're not going to miss a lot. And I'm going to share my slides at the end. So, and Bobby can share them anytime throughout or whatever, but at the end maybe is useful so that if you want to look at these slides later, you want to use them for something, you can have them. Um, and I want to encourage people to take breaks when you need to. I'm not going to put a break into this, but like go eat, go to the bathroom, do what you need to do. You can always engage with the recording later. Um, Oh, this is not relevant to this particular event. Some of you might be in a shared space. It might be harder to use the chat if you're like with a group watching this, but yeah, be creative, do whatever you want. I just want to confirm with the shareable people. Am I right that this is 90 minutes before I go on for 90 minutes?
You sure are. Yeah.
Okay, great. Love that I didn't write that down. Okay, cool. Okay, that was my assumption. Okay, so welcome to this horrible fucking moment in the history of humans. We are all having a very hard time. And some signs that I'm noticing that we're not doing well include that a lot of people, I think I misspelled judgmental, but who knows, are feeling judgmental, aggrieved, and resentful. That's a really common experience when we're under the stress of like the really terrifying headlines every day, the immense grief about genocide, ecocide, community crisis. We're caring for each other during crises like not having healthcare, not having enough money for rent, food, people, being unhoused. Like it's just really intense. People living with long COVID. There's just like so much. Um, a lot of us might be acting annoyed or impatient with each other, non-responsive. That can really be hard. That can really freak people out too. Like, oh my God, Dean didn't respond to my text. Is he mad at me? Like, or he's such a flake. Like, there's a lot of like places we can go when people get overwhelmed and non-responsive. A lot of people I hear from, and I see this in myself when I'm stressed out, running late or losing things. Like, yeah, I'm curious if people noticing other signs of distress um, with you or your friends? Anyone want to throw a few things in the chat? Avoidance, yeah, generalized avoidance, not paying attention to details, feeling defensive, isolated, dissociated, fatigued, having miscommunications, feeling apathy, closed off, people using drugs and alcohol more than they might otherwise want to. Oh, getting overly involved in social media consumption or media consumption, like not can't stop doom scrolling, can't stop looking at the news, even though I know it's not the right thing to do first thing or the right thing to do last thing at night. Exhaustion, poor memory. Yeah, we're having such a hard time. Thank you all for yeah, can't sleep, sleeping too much. We've all got different versions of this. So I think one of the questions is how do we want to treat each other knowing that the other people all might be having a very hard time too? Maybe people want to throw a few ideas in the chat, like just as a way to sort of open this up, like how should we treat each other? Tenderness, Paige says. Yeah, curiosity and compassion, grace, assume best intentions, be human, be patient, have healthy boundaries, be soft. Yeah, hold space, transparency, inclusion of needs, asking people about how they're doing and actually wanting to hear the answer, clear expectations, telling each other when we can't get something done. Hard on institutions, soft on people. I love that. News detox, helping each other. Actually, one of my best friends is reading a book about how to quit your cell phone or something, and I'm like, great, let's all read it together. Like helping each other try on the good stuff, or helping each other encourage good practices like I'm gonna cook some food for you today, you cook some food for me tomorrow, or have you meditated, or let's both promise to go to bed early, or whatever. Moisturizer, love it. Yeah, yeah, wonderful. We'll be talking about all this stuff. Thank you. These are great responses. I really appreciate it. Playing together. Yeah. How can we? I mean, I just went to a meditation retreat. Thank God. I was like, really, really needed that. And the teacher very wisely quoted something and said that love is having a generous interpretation. And it's really hard to have a generous interpretation when you're really stressed out and feeling a lot of scarcity of time and scarcity a lot of times, like in our mutual aid projects or in our community projects, like, God, there's not enough people here. We've got so much to do. There's so much need. It can be hard to have a generous interpretation, but also with your kids, with your lovers, with your roommates, with your family members, with your friends, like, what's it like to try to be generous with someone, even when you feel defensive, afraid, when there's a history of all the times we've all been betrayed or not listened to, I'm not saying this is easy, but just I really liked it as a definition of love. Okay. So conflict, one thing I've noticed in whatever being in these movements since the 90s is that there's a lot of conflict in our movements and in our lives. Our movements aren't special in that way. But it's so disappointing because we like came here for liberation and we have higher expectations of each other because we like are all people dedicated to liberation. So it's really painful when we disappoint each other. It's like I finally found people who care about what I care about or share some of my experiences. And then, dang, they like did the same stuff that I've experienced at work and school and whatever. But a lot of times conflict isn't actually about the content, that's kind of burning us out. It's actually the emotional experience underneath it. So like I feel like a lot of people when they left the group or when they left the movement and they said, I can't do this work anymore, I can't work with these people, or it wasn't always like the thing that you were disagreeing about. It was actually the feeling of betrayal, disappointment, or shame or exclusion. And so there's a level at which we often aren't tracking our emotional experience. We have a lot more practice tracking political words and political ideas and less with our emotional experiences because we live in cultures that tell us to suppress our emotions and numb out. But yeah, conflict makes people leave groups, drives us away. It discourages new people from staying. You get to the group and everybody's like super grumpy with each other and makes it seem like it's a completely miserable thing to do. Or people are talking smack about other groups or about other people in the community. You don't totally understand what they're talking about. They're just like, oh, that group, I roll. And then you are like, feel like you're supposed to be cool and know what's wrong with that group, but you don't know. Like, it's a bad vibe, right? And a lot of groups and projects just entirely break apart because people are in a conflict. They're doing something really important that's really needed, and they fall apart over conflict. So to me, conflict is the second biggest security issue in our movements. The first biggest one is, of course, like the actual cops and all the things that the community that they're doing to our communities. But the second biggest one is all the stuff we do to each other. And so often when we're having strong feelings, we use our politics to justify them. So we weaponize our political language and we don't really deal with like, I felt left out or I felt like nobody was paying, like recognizing my work or whatever. Instead, it's like we use a bunch of political terms to be like, you guys are being a bunch of liberals or you are being whatever, and that's true. That can be true at the same time, but there's usually like an emotional dimension and a set of political dimensions. Like we have all these political and identity differences and we're having emotional reactions. And if we could get a little more skilled up on the emotional reactions piece as well, instead of just throwing political words at each other, I think we could repair more often and actually stick together or still work in the same communities and respect each other, even if we have a different working relationship. We could love and care for everyone, even if we don't like them. That's my goal. So I'm a police and prison and border abolitionist. I believe we shouldn't have any of those structures. And as part of that work, we think about other ways to deal with harm and conflict besides like calling the cops on each other. So there's a huge like feminist, anti-racist, abolitionist movement, which maybe some of you know about, a concept called transformative justice, which might be useful to like Google if that's new to you. That's about like, how do we solve problems? Because we do have problems without cops. How do we deal with the fact that people really do hurt each other in our communities, especially like family violence, sexual and intimate partner violence, without calling the cops? How do we reframe away from the police state version where there's like bad people who need to be locked up or gotten rid of, and then like the rest of us? How do we reframe that? So when I think about conflict in movement groups and in mutual aid work, I think about these abolitionist ideas. So for me, it boils down to remembering that we are all imperfect people doing imperfect work. Like this is like, a phrase that I use with myself all the time when I feel frustrated in a group or critical of myself, or I want to really like in my mind, I'm like really harshing out on somebody. It's like, wow, here we are again being imperfect. As abolitionists, we know there isn't like, it's not like, oh, you're a bad guy, but I'm a bad guy. It's like we're all imperfect people doing imperfect work. We're learning as we go and in front of each other and in public. Everybody does harmful things and everyone experiences harm. There's not good people and bad people. So if I find myself in a conflict trying to be like, he's the bad guy, everybody, let's get him, let's get rid of him, that's probably not aligned with my values. Conflict is, as I said before, an inevitable part of all work. So it's like, it's not surprising. Of course, we ran into conflict. Of course, we disagreed. It actually happens all the time in ways that are kind of fine. You're like, let's go to dinner on Saturday. And I'm like, I can't. I could do it on Friday. And you're like, let's go to the Ethiopian place. And I'm like, that's too far for me to walk. And then you're like, okay, how about the pizza place? And then I'm like, I don't need gluten. And then, like, this is actually a conflict, but it's like we're figuring it out, right? Like, or like you're like, the flyer should be purple. And I'm like, I think that's too dark. It'll be hard to read. And then you're like, okay, how about lavender? Like we work things out all the time, or hard things where you're like, what do you mean you're an abolitionist, Dean? And I tell you about it and you're chewing on it for a week and then we talk about it again. It's like only sometimes does it feel like conflict, like where it's like we're suddenly, I don't want to talk to you anymore, things like that. I'm telling other people that you're bad, Um, a basic abolitionist idea is that no one is disposable. So like even if I don't like the way that you are working in our community very much, I can't actually get rid of you. I can't snap my fingers and have you disappear, and I shouldn't try to. Like that's not a cool motive, even though of course we all sometimes feel that way about ourselves and each other. So like actually believing that people are worthwhile, that it's possible for people to change, that it's possible for me to learn to tolerate more kinds of people, that kind of thinking. It's okay to have boundaries and limits. So like, yeah, no one's disposable, but I don't have to be roommates with everyone. Like if it doesn't work out for me to live with you, we could not live together, but I could still know that you're a human and like deserve housing, right? Like I don't have to date you forever. Like we can change our relationships with people and have boundaries and limits while also knowing that no one's disposable. Abolitionism is about seeking right-sized responses. So if I felt left out when you guys, didn't invite me to the party, even though we're in the same political group, it's not the right time to go on Instagram and tell everybody that you're like evil transphobes, you know? Like, is there another way? You know what I mean? Like, what's the right size response to the thing that happened? That's what we're seeking. Is it direct feedback? Is it asking for an apology? Is it, like, what is it that's the right size response? Instead of um, the police and carceral society we live in either ignores things that are bad that happen and are like, that didn't happen to you, shut up, or throw away the key, lock them up, kind of thing. And fundamentally, an abolitionist approach knows that shame and punishment and stigmatizing people doesn't work. It doesn't help people learn. That's not, when I don't like what you did, those methods are not going to work. So this is like a really strong belief I have, and it's very countercultural. And I think we'll talk about it more throughout the rest of the session, but I just want to ask people to kind of chew on that. And especially because a lot of us were punished, shamed, and stigmatized as kids, we might think it's the way people learn, and it's really not. And there's like so much research about this, but I'm not going to go into the depth, but I think it's a really important principle. So abolitionist approaches, if we're not going to throw people away, if we're not going to tell everybody to hate somebody, we're going to do some other stuff. We're going to build skills and culture in our groups, like any group we're in, a family group, a household, a mutual aid group, that can prevent conflict or prevent conflicts from getting bigger than they need to get. Like we're going to actually build stuff. That's what we're going to talk about today is how to do some of that. And we believe in taking care of things directly with each other rather than looking for an outside authority. So we've lived in these cultures where it's like, get the teacher, get the parent, get the cop if things are hard. And we're moving towards, can I just actually talk to this person? Can I ask for support if I need it from friends? But like, can we believe in our ability to take care of things directly? So things that help in general, this is like my broadest overview of things that help with preventing and addressing conflict in our groups. Transparency, like one of the big things groups fall apart over is like, how did this decision get made? Why didn't I get a say in it? Or where did the money go? Or who got credit? So having transparency is huge. And like governments don't have transparency, jobs don't, nonprofits mostly don't. So like we're not used to this. So it's like, um, it's a value that really, really helps things feel different and more trustworthy than those kinds of institutions that govern our lives. Horizontal structures can really help, like not creating structures where somebody's the boss, especially like most of the community work we all do will be unpaid work because, like very little work, radical work can be paid. And mostly if you're being paid by like rich people or philanthropists. And so, or the government. So like aka our opponents. So the most radical things we do probably will be autonomous, not paid, with very few exceptions. And so given that, people aren't going to work for free for a boss. People want to say in what they're doing. Like if I'm giving my time to this, I want to be able to be like, hey, I think this idea is kind of off, or like that sounds pretty ableist the way you guys framed that, or whatever, or like that's not going to, And so the idea of no bosses, no flakes, like actually we all show up and we participate, and we're clear about what we can do and what we can't do, and we don't boss each other around. And I'll talk more about that as we go. And then the other key piece of preventing and addressing conflict is actually caring about what happens in a group. You're all at this workshop, so you probably have some instinct that this is important. A lot of times in our movements, it can be like what matters is like getting out the next demo or the next food drop or the next, shifts at the child care collective or whatever. And we're focused on the outside, which is very typical in like capitalism and white supremacy and patriarchy. And we don't focus on how it was inside. How did it go? And so you can kind of like what I see mostly, you start a group, first 6 months, we're all there's all this urgency. We're like, yeah, we're doing this thing that's really important. Maybe there was a big incident that led to us all responding in this way. And we're kind of running on goodwill and maybe friendship and for 6 months or 18 months or whatever. But at some point, we need to actually have clear internal culture and structures and care about how things are going internally because the goodwill runs out. We run into some kind of conflict. So, what this kind of work can look like is helping people have good meeting facilitation skills. Most of us have never been to a good meeting if it's just been like a job or school or family. There's been like somebody bossing us around or it's been really boring or whatever. Making sure everybody in the group knows how to facilitate so that it's not always the same people who end up starting to feel like bosses. Um, we're going to talk about this more, building skills around direct feedback and not gossiping in the sense of learning how to talk to each other rather than talking behind other people's backs with critical ideas. But I'll talk about the difference between that and confidential conversations. Forgiveness and compassion, again, very countercultural skills in our society. Uh, we are a punishment-oriented society. I'm speaking generally about like liberal democracies that have prisons, but especially I'm thinking about the United States is extremely punishment oriented. Big champion of that globally, spreading that around the world. Confidentiality. This is a big one. Most people don't actually have this skill. Um, if we were just at the meeting and I come to you and I'm ranting, I can't believe what Tom did. It's so outrageous. I'm so pissed. Can't believe that people said that about me. And then you often might have your own response, like you're kind of freaked out by my anger. And then you go and tell a bunch of people this. And then it gets back to Tom. And then now, like, it's very disorganizing for our communities. So learning how to be like, oh, someone's ranting and raving at me about something that happened to them. They're upset. I'm going to assume this is a confidential conversation. I might say to them, oh, do you want to talk to Tom about this directly? I wonder if that would help. Or I might just keep it confidential unless they tell me otherwise. Like this, it's so disorganizing having us all be like, did you hear what Dean said about his roommate to so and so? Did you hear what he said about his roommate's lover? This is very bad for us. Like we don't even need the cops to disorganize us when we do that kind of stuff. And most of us are doing that. So really thinking about confidentiality carefully. Welcoming newcomers. This is a really hard thing in our movements. It means not trying to be cool. It means trying to be friendly, which might be goofy and sweet and generous. It means letting people not yet have all the language or all the ideas. We want to welcome so many people into our movements because things are so bad and we are so understaffed in our movements. And then we want to encourage them to grow new solidarities. So we got to be like, oh, you don't know that yet? Great. I'm going to tell you why do I care about this thing? Why, like, oh yeah, you've never thought about how this impacts trans people or undocumented people. I'd love to tell you why it matters so much to me. Lovingly welcoming new people, giving them meaningful roles, and watching out for perfectionism, procrastination, overwork, and mean internal voices. Hopefully, I'll have time to get to some of these things. Bobby, if you don't mind, would you put in the chat the link to the workshop series? There's a workshop series I have that goes into a lot of these in more detail that we're not going to do tonight. And so maybe that'll help if people are interested in like a bunch of other workshops and and it includes the slides. You can do the idea is that you could like watch the video with your group or you could like take the slides and do it yourself. Basically just trying to make this stuff easy to access. Some of it's based off of the mutual aid book and some of it goes like a lot deeper than the book does. Okay. So, um, emotionally activated and reacting people. Um, when somebody is having strong feelings in our meeting or in front of us, we all react, right? Like it is like it's okay to notice that like your reaction, I just want to say this, your reaction could be that you get very still and calm. It could be a reaction where your heart is racing. It could be a reaction where you're like, I got to get out of here. 'Cause there's so many different things. But I do think some people think that the still and calm is a non-reaction, and it's actually an adaptation that many of us have from our families. If we had like a reactive or angry person, is that we become like very like our blood pressure like sinks. Like all of these reactions. And so just knowing, oh, someone's having a strong feeling in front of me. I'm probably having one too. Let me check in with myself. Just being aware of our reactions is massive. The questions I'm bringing to this are how do we build groups, projects, and collaborations that can't be destroyed by one emotionally activated person? In my experience right now of being in our movements since the 90s, I've seen again and again that one person who's having a big stir can disorganize an entire group and often have lead that group to no longer doing its work or not existing at all. And that's not great. That's not good for us. That's a big security issue. So what I want to do is build skills for us to all hold and care for people when they're activated. And when I'm saying this to you, you might maybe right now you're imagining a time when you were in a group and somebody was really activated. And now I want you to also imagine that sometimes you're the activated person because we are all sometimes the activated person. So the questions are both how do we support people when they're really activated? And how do we, when we're activated, not do harm to the group, to ourselves or others? It's so hard not to look at the chat. I really want to just like see everything you guys are saying, but there's no way I could possibly keep up. Okay. Um, so a big important point for me in this, this is kind of new work. I've only been presenting this stuff since like May, a lot of this. And it's coming from what I'm seeing in our movements with people under this much stress. This feels like a really important idea. We do the most harm to others when we're feeling like we're the victim. This is really counterintuitive. Like when I am like, those people, they just all left me out, or those people, I do so much work. I've been doing more work in this group than everybody else, or they don't even care about trans people, or they weren't listening to anything I was saying about how this is going to affect unhoused people in our communities. When I'm feeling aggrieved and victimized and resentful, that's when I'm likely to go and like write the really messed up email to somebody, treat somebody with a cold shoulder, gossip negatively about people in my group or about another group in town, um, post a bunch of stuff on Instagram that's really inflammatory, violate someone's privacy. Like this is when like lovers often like, go look in someone else's phone. You know what I mean? Like think of a time when you were like, how dare they? And then you went and did something like that maybe you shouldn't have done. So what this means, it's so counterintuitive, but when I have those feelings, that's when I'm like, oh, yellow flag, go talk to a friend before taking action. Go get some support before I press send on that email. Because it's not that we aren't legitimately sometimes victimized, but the victim narrative in our heads can cause us to skip our value assessment and then do stuff that later we wish we hadn't done. So this image, I made these images with the artist Sophia Lucido Johnson. I really love them. And this is an image that uh, I think captures this a little bit, the vibe. I love to have a little visual in it. This image of somebody crossing their arms, turning their back to the group, sabotaging the shared space or project, and maybe cultivating or acting on vengeful feelings. Maybe some people in this room have been this person or have been in a meeting with this person. This is a character we all can inhabit, right? So just this is something we want to look at. What is that like? What can we do with that? This person also could be like banging the table and ranting and raving and stomping out and calling people names. All of these things can happen and do happen. And they're all human things that are not bad. It's not bad to feel this way, but what can we do with these feelings since they are inevitably going to come up in our groups and in ourselves? My question is like, how can we hold this with care? Um, One thing I want to put into the mix here is this thing about feedback. So a lot of the conflict in our groups and in our relationships happens because you keep doing something I don't like and I keep not telling you. And or I've realized I've done something wrong and I'm afraid to admit the mistake. A lot of times we think that if we admit a mistake in front of other people, they'll use it against us. Or if we give feedback, it'll break the connection. Like, I don't tell you and don't tell you and don't tell you that it's hard for me when you don't do the tasks in the group or that you never help clean up the food or whatever. And then I blow up at you and maybe blow up the whole group, or I disappear. So a lot of the workshops I do with groups is like trying to create moments when more of this feedback can come to the surface. Something I've used a lot that's in the mutual aid book, and Bobby, maybe you'd put it in the chat, is this group culture chart where it's like, and you can find a video of me talking through this in that link Bobby put in earlier of the building capacity for mutual aid groups workshops, where it's like you look at the chart and you're like, let's all talk about group culture, and you're like, oh, what's the group culture like? Where have we seen some of these positive or difficult qualities? What are we noticing in our own group? Let's do a go around so we hear from the quiet people, like just ways to like get the feedback flowing that's not coming. Don't wait until it's an accusation, right? Like have the conversation earlier. Like you can have a 15 or 20-minute conversation with that chart in your meeting any week, like just getting ahead of this and making space for feedback. Because the thing is, we fear it's going to break the connection because we live in a society where people are so terrified of getting in trouble and where people are like so afraid of being thrown away. So we have this fear. And the reality is it actually breaks the connection to not give the feedback, right? The truth is that if I actually give you the feedback, if I'm like, hey, when you're late to the meetings, it feels like you don't value my time. And then you're like, and then you hear me and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to work on that. Then actually now you're like wildly trustworthy for me because when the fuck has that ever happened in our lives, right? Like when have we been listened to at jobs with families and with like no, right? So like giving the feedback and hearing each other, and I really recommend people just start with anything small. I'm working on a like a little thing groups can say at the beginning and end of meetings to just affirm that we believe in checking, that we believe in direct feedback, and we believe in not trying not to talk behind each other's backs and instead talking to each other directly, and that we know that we're all learning in public and that we're imperfect people doing imperfect work, and that we want to try learning to apologize and repair. Just so that we can remind each other to try it, and it can help to try it on small things before the big things often. Yeah, so these are some things that are just review. Feedback is often difficult because we live in carceral societies. Most of us have only experienced really high stakes feedback, like you're going to get fired, you're going to fail a grade, you're going to get physically punished by your parents. A lot of us have a perfectionism. If I don't do this right, I'll get in trouble. We all have imposter syndrome. We think like everyone's going to find out, like I'm not radical enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not whatever enough. And so then it's so scary to think about getting any feedback. We think we might be thrown away by the group or by people. There's power dynamics like race, gender, class, age, disability that can like make it all so much scarier in every direction you can imagine. And most of us just haven't like really had good feedback experiences, like getting or giving. Um, but this is like I would say the abolitionist skill is like it's like it like produces trustworthy relationships. It prevents conflict. I want to say two things that are really important. When someone gives you feedback and you feel defensive, one option is just to like try to listen for the truth and repeat back to them what they're saying. Like a little bit of faking it till you make it, especially with someone you don't have a lot of intimacy with. Like can I not front load defensiveness is like it's hard, but it's like it's just allows like just like I care that this person is trying to tell me something. If you're getting feedback, it means someone thinks you matter. They think you're doing something in the community that matters. Even if they're yelling at you, it's because they think it's important. So it's a sign of your value to them, even if it doesn't feel like that because you're scared. And can you just be like, I'm going to try to listen for what's grounded in this. I'm going to maybe go cry with a friend later about how scary it was because it is scary to receive feedback, but I'm just going to try to signal that I'm interested in this feedback. The other thing is when we give people feedback, we can do stuff like, I want to share something with you because I really value you. Is now a good time? That like getting consent can really relax someone. Um, I um, I really care about what we're both doing together, or I see that we both value this or that. Like any of that can really, really, really help. Um, and then also the third thing is like, yeah, so we can't guarantee people will give us the feedback in a nice way, and we want to listen to it anyway, even if they yell, even if they call us a name, even if a part of it is untrue. We still want to listen for what might be useful, and we can still grieve what wasn't true, but don't defend right then. And then we really want to know that when we give someone feedback, it might not work the first time. There's no guarantees. So it's not like I can promise you like it's going to work out great. Sometimes you have to hear something 5 times, 15 times, 20 times, especially if it's important. like you're not a good listener, or, like I feel like you don't pay attention as much when women speak, or like, heavy shit, like, or like it seems like you treat Black people in this group with like less care. It's like it's a big deal. So, um, the thing is, could we imagine that it's worth giving people feedback, even if we don't get instant satisfaction? Because you've been there. It's been the fifth friend who told you this when you actually heard it, or it's been the 20th, Like I'm willing to be one of those 5 or 20 because I care about it's like I'm investing in every single person in our community, and it doesn't mean I get instant satisfaction. Hard, but I just want to be real about that because probably there's people in this room who've given feedback and been like disappointed. Um, so yeah, I'm curious if people will share in the chat a bit. What are some of the things that you've struggled to give someone feedback about? Their snappiness, COVID safety. I hear a lot of that about COVID safety. Their defensiveness, when they've harmed me, their lack of excellence. Um, yeah, values misaligned. Um, Anybody giving feedback to somebody about like the dishes, um, the way they facilitated a meeting, yeah, how they hold power in a group, when they talk way too much, punitive behavior, fake feminism, racism and microaggressions, yep, how their stress affects you, yeah, a lot about COVID in here, their temper, great, overpromising, misuse of resources, finances, yep, yep, gossip, blame shifting, flakiness. Yeah. Body odor. Impressive. That's a hard one. That's a hard one to give feedback about. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot in here. I appreciate people's ideas. Yeah, great. Urgency culture. Um, Feeling ignored. Great. Um, and I'm curious, what's something that goes through your head when you're deciding that you're not going to give someone feedback? When you're like, oh, should I tell my friend this or not? What's something that goes through your mind? I don't want to ruin the vibe. I'm too exhausted. Maybe I'm wrong. What if they don't listen to me? Um, yeah, I don't have the emotional capacity, assuming they won't listen. Maybe I'm being too much. They'll take it personally. I convince myself it isn't a big deal. Yeah, I can carry this. They can't handle it right now. It didn't go well before. This is bad timing. Yeah, one of the things I think is, am I being too sensitive? So one of the things I think happens a lot that I'm hearing in these too is like we think the other person can't hear it. Sometimes I hear this a lot. They're not that important to me anyway. Almost like we disconnect ahead of time. Like, oh, they're not that good a friend anyway. Their politics aren't that good anyway. They're, like, and we dismiss them before giving them a chance to grow. Or like, I might be wrong. I shouldn't do this. When of course, like that's the whole vulnerability. Like, what if I give the feedback and I learn that I misunderstood something? Fine. That's okay. You know? Like we're so defended against each other. Yeah, you guys have so much here. Fear of rejection. Yeah, I really appreciate the vulnerability in these answers. Um, I just want to say, I'm not going to talk about this at length right now, but I sometimes use some of the guidelines from this thing called nonviolent communication, where you like you ask for consent before you give the feedback, which is nice because someone might be like, I need to take my meds before I can talk, or whatever. I just lost a friend today. It's not the right time, or whatever. And then the second thing is you agree to a formula where I'm just going to share right now what I observed and what I'm feeling. So I don't make any generalizations about you. I'm not like, you're a bad friend. I'm like, you missed my birthday and I felt sad. Like what I observed and what I'm feeling. And you avoid saying always and never because it's like nobody never does the dishes. You know what I mean? Like it's like you just focus on like something like more right-sized and what you felt without being like what they're like. You don't generalize about them. And then they repeat back to you what they heard and the impact. And then you don't have to have them respond right then. You can be like, you know what, let's have another session later where you tell me what you thought of this. Or they can ask your consent. Can I respond to you? What I think. Sometimes separating those two parts of the conversation can mean there's less of an immediate defensiveness thing. Um, I think it's kind of useful to do a process like that, especially with people you know well. But even with somebody I don't know well, I still really try to keep an eye on asking for consent. Is this an okay time? And naming what I observed and what I felt so that I don't tell them who they are. You know, that feels really important. Okay. Um, so we're not going to do this exercise, but it's an example of something you could do in a workshop in your group where you could do what we just did and talk about why feedback is important and why it's hard in a carceral society and why it's abolitionist. And then you can do this little pair and share where you each person shares a time when they got feedback that helped, a time when they got feedback that was like not grounded or didn't work, time when they gave feedback and it worked and was useful, and a time when they gave feedback and it didn't work out. So that people start to have a conversation like, oh, what's feedback like and what's hard and what, just like I recommend groups have just a 20-minute feedback thing, like every 6 months, or definitely do it in your new group, like for new members, like just build a culture of feedback. Okay, so back to the activated person, right? Often it's somebody who had not shared feedback along the way and is now exploding, or who felt like they shared it but nobody listened. That can be the case, and a lot of times people. One other thing I should mention. Uh, I remember when I was like a teenage white activist. Wow, I didn't get people's subtle messages about my racism. How many people gave me feedback about some ways I was moving? Like, you know what I mean? And so we might need to be more explicit with our feedback than we think. Like, which doesn't, to me, that doesn't, I still think it's most useful to give people feedback one-on-one, like to go to DMs before posting about them on Instagram, to tell somebody something hard first one-on-one. Um, but you might need to say it more explicitly than you think. I just want to say, like, especially if they don't get it, like if they're not noticing it, because it's like they're bad at it right now, it can be helpful to be like, am I being too subtle? And I might feel like I told you 1,000 times, but you might have never actually heard it. So just looking for that, like, how explicit do I need to be? So, um, when people what so okay, so we're back to the activated person. I've just left the meeting. I'm so mad and I'm complaining to you. I'm having all these strong feelings. I'm so mad at Tom and Bobby, but it's not at you. It's just like around me. And a lot of us do a set of things. One is like we shut down emotionally when our friend is upset. We're just like, yuck, I'm freaked out, I'm frozen. This is a really common response in a culture that doesn't give us a lot of emotional skills. Maybe we grew up with an emotional world where somebody was really scary when they were upset. Maybe we grew up in an emotional world where everybody was supposed to be really shut down, depending on what lessons we learned in early life. This is a really common one. A lot of us like give a bunch of advice. Like we don't, we're basically, we don't realize it, but we're anxious because of their feelings and we're trying to get them to shut up by telling them what to do, or by like kind of being dismissive, like, oh no, she didn't mean that. So that can be a really common response that's like not very functional. And the third one is that we like are like, oh yeah, let's get them. Let's post a bunch of stuff online about how bad Tom and Bobby are. Like we get involved in like a campaign. Again, many of us grew up in families and in subcultures where this was loyalty. So we learned to like get involved in the hype. No shame, no blame. But these things don't work very well in our movements. They can really cause a lot of havoc. So, what actually helps? Reflecting their experience back. When somebody is freaking out in front of us, just being like, oh, wow, that sounds like it was so painful when she said that. That sounds like it was really hard feeling left out that way. That sounds like it really pushed, like, a lot of grief, whatever. That sounds so hard. If you feel like you just have to fake it till you make it, just say that line. That sounds so hard. That sounds so hard. That can go so far in actually having someone feel seen and recognized. I was just talking to somebody earlier tonight who's like doing a conflict support process with a group that's had a major, difficult, really hard conflict. And one of the things the person's doing is individually reaching out to like 40 or 50 people who all were involved in the group over these many years where these bad things were happening. And the people have been telling this person who's not even in the group, it just means so much to me that you're listening to me. It's already like helping them heal and move on just to have one person finally listen to them. So if we could catch people in the moment If we could listen to them when they're having a hard time and not dismiss them or shut them up or shut down or tell them to seek revenge, we might stop these cycles of really damaging conflict. Taking them seriously, not rushing or changing it. And I like to imagine that it's like a wave in the ocean and it needs to complete. And I'm going to be here with you while you have your whole upset and be like, that sounds so hard. What you're experiencing matters. Instead of trying to correct their thinking, right? Because a lot of us, when we live in societies that minimize our experiences of pain and harm. And so we join movement groups and we're like, I'm finally going to be part of something where I'm heard and seen. And then we have a bad experience where people don't hear us or see us at some point, and then we wreak havoc. We're like, I have to tear down everybody in this group and like this group itself because I'm feeling all of my historical cumulative pain of being dismissed. So if we could catch each other in the moment of pain and listen, I think it could be a huge change in the likelihood of those of us having to do that really hard stuff to each other. And if somebody is there being like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into Shareable's Instagram because I still have the password and I'm going to be like, let's not, you know, like just uh, helping each other be like, let's pause. I think those people are actually part of our community, even if they did something you don't like. I don't think they're our real target, or like I know you're upset right now with Dean, but he's also part of our community, and I wonder if there's any way to reach him at some point. I'd like to help you think that through. Let's not take this action against him yet. I think that would be very ethical of us to help each other stay in our values. So then there's the other option, which is like maybe some of you have experienced when someone's really pissed at you. It's no longer that they're pissed at somebody else in the group. They're pissed at you. So much harder, so much scarier. We might be feeling defensive, angry, terrified, God knows what else. It's really, really, really scary when someone's mad at us. And also because like I mean, kind of one of our worst qualities slash best qualities is that we all want to be good so badly. And it's so scary. Like, what if I'm not good? So it's a really big deal to be afraid in this way. Um, so yeah, I'm curious when someone's mad at you about you, what kinds of things are you afraid of, and what can help you stay aligned with your values when you're in that really scary moment? Breathing, seeking to understand. Yeah, trying to imagine why they're saying this. Thinking of times when you've gotten good feedback about yourself. Yeah, that's so cool. Stopping believing people are always good or always bad. Processing with someone, checking to make sure I have understanding. Yeah, we're all so afraid of being bad. Reminding ourselves that we're safe, slowing down. Yeah. We're all afraid of people talking about us. Yep. Someone says looking at plants is helpful. Saying, okay, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. That's another really great phrase. I care about this. Yep. Someone using DBT skills. Cool. Um, so Tom says at Shareable, we're going to start holding a monthly mistake-a-thon. That's cool. Yeah, we got to make a lot of mistakes to do this work. Yeah. Rescheduling the conversation a bit if feelings are too high at that moment, calling on ancestors. Yeah. Thanking them for the feedback. Yeah. Thank you all. This is really helpful. So one thing I just want to bring up is that belonging is really hard. Like if you're in our movements, you've probably had a lot of moments in life where you felt like you didn't belong. You were different from others, or you had radical ideas, or you were left out because of some of your identities or experiences. And so a lot of us show up to movement spaces like a meeting or a conference, and we don't know it, but we're actually programmed to look for how we don't belong. I've seen this so much. Like people are like, I'm finally gonna go. I mean, I'm a very ancient trans person. I remember like in the in the 90s and the early 2000s, be like, oh my God, I'm gonna finally go to a conference with other trans people or a meeting or a social space. And so many times people would show up and there's just so much hopefulness, and then they're also so ready to get wounded. You know what I mean? There's so much vulnerability. So this is really common. One, we should plan our meetings and spaces knowing everyone's showing up like this. So can we be more fucking welcoming, less cliquish, less coolness hierarchies, more kind? The more awkward the person is, the more we love them. Just like really like pouring care towards everybody who enters, thinking about ways to make sure everybody gets heard. Like often think about groups, like if you've got a group going and we're all really pissed about something, whatever, always making sure there's room for the new person to say what they care about, even though we all already know that we hate jails or like hate ICE or whatever. Like, can we have a moment for new people to speak into the room their wisdom or passion to feel part of things, helping building belonging. I mean, some groups build belonging by being like, here's a cool name tag, or like, have a t-shirt of our group, or like, will you bring a song to the next meeting, whatever is culturally you know typical in your group. This phrase, if it's hysterical it's historical, I think is useful in thinking about reactivity, even though the term hysterical might be sexist. um, it's like if something has if I feel really upset, probably part of what's going on is what's happening right now, and part of it is an old wound. And just knowing that about myself, it doesn't mean what's happening now doesn't matter. It just means my feelings might be at a 10 and what's happening now might be at a 2 or a 5. And just knowing that can help me try to build a right-sized response and care about the part of me that is okay, my real belief is that we are all very harmed and wounded in groups, like our families, schools, churches, workplaces. And when we join groups to work for liberation, we can find healing. And the way that works is you join the group with all of your excitement about liberation, and then all your old stuff gets stirred up, and then it's an opportunity to have healing. So I never felt listened to in my family. And in this group, I'm starting to feel like no one's listening to me. Can I create an experience with others where I get listened to and learn a new deep lesson about my value, or where I learn a new lesson about being recognized for my labor, or about being cared about as a person with a disability, or being seen in my experiences of racism and white supremacy in this culture, or of transphobia? Like, can I have a different experience? I have to know that I'm having a historical experience and work with that with others instead of going into the group, having a big reaction because I have really high expectations, and then having a really damaging conflict. That's where I become unsatisfiable. This is a tool from my newer book. And I also have an episode of the podcast that runs through if that's a more useful thing. The podcast is also called Love in a Fucked Up World. Maybe somebody can put a link to it in the chat if you're willing. So this exercise is what people have said is most useful in the book. It's called What Else is True? And it's a worksheet. And basically, it's like when I'm activated. And how do you know you're activated? You are thinking about it at night when you're trying to sleep. You're talking about it to everybody. You're thinking about it all the time. So I can't stop thinking about this thing somebody said in the meeting, or this thing my roommate did, or this thing my lover did. I'm activated. Um, or this thing that the group didn't do, or whatever. And so what I do is I take a worksheet like this, small circle in the inside, big circle on the outside. And the small circle in the middle, I write the thing I'm freaking out about. Like, I can't believe Tom said this to me, or whatever. I can't believe this group didn't do this. And the outside, I write what else is true. And I go through a set of questions. First, what else is true about the person I'm focused on? So in the small circle, I write, oh, I'm so mad at Tom. And then I write, oh, I remember that Tom was really kind to me when I was sick. And I know that Tom's caring for somebody right now who's in the hospital. And I know that, Tom also believes in mutual aid, whatever, right? That kind of thing. Like, what else is true about them? So it's like, it's not that the thing I'm thinking isn't true. It's just like, what else? Which our nervous systems don't like. If you just be like, Dean, don't think that, it won't work. You got to be like, yes, and. And then what else is true about the group? What else? Okay, so yeah, maybe Tom said that thing in the meeting I didn't like, but actually, like three other people didn't say anything. And also, like Bobby has written me these really kind emails. Like maybe am I making this whole thing about the one person I'm freaking out about, but maybe the whole group doesn't hate me. Just like, can I remember? Or also I've had these positive experiences in this group. I loved this project we did, or some of the meetings have been really fun. Like, can I remember anything else? And then what do I not know? Because usually when we're really activated, we're making up a story. We're like, "And Tom has always thought I was too da da da." You know what I mean? Like making it up. So can I not make up a bunch of stuff? Can I be like, oh, I don't actually know if Tom's text, if the tone was meant that way? Or like, I don't know if they actually already asked somebody else to do it. Whatever. What do I not know? And then maybe this is the most important part, and I already saw this reflected in the chat earlier. What else is true about me, my life, my support system, my history of work? Okay, Dean, right now you're in a big conflict with people at Shareable, but you're also in this other group and it's feeling pretty satisfying. And remember how much like kindness you felt with the people from this group, or I'm proud of this thing I did, or you know what, I have some really good friendships right now, or like, thank God I have this little dog, or like whatever. Just put what else is true, because basically when we're activated, it's like, tunnel vision. And we're trying to get back to like a bigger view so we can have some perspective. After you do that, you do this little worksheet. On the left side, you write things that are your responsibility. What can I control or contribute to? On that side, I can have dinner tonight. I can try to get a good night's sleep. I can call a friend and talk about this. I can do my tasks from the shareable meeting, even though I'm feeling freaked out. I can, um, watch my favorite movie and get a little mental break, whatever it is. And on the right side, I write what is beyond my responsibility and control. And the first thing that goes on that list for me always is what other people think about me. I cannot control what other people think about me. It's a tragedy. It's the tragedy of my life, but it is true. None of us can. It is so good to let that go. I cannot control what other people think of me. I never will be able to. It'll it'll rise and fall over the course of my life. The more work you do that matters, the more people will think wonderful and terrible things about you that are true and untrue. So you write down all the things that are not your responsibility to control. I can't control what's going to happen in this group. I can't control what's going to happen with this terrible eco side. I can't, there's so much I can't control. Rip it in half, flush, burn, whatever, throw away the right side of the page. Focus on what I can contribute and control. And then the last part of this exercise is I ask myself, are there any sore spots from my history that might be rubbing against here? Oh, this actually feels like when I was left out of things when I was a kid, or this feels like when I was lied to about this thing, when I was had this job, or this feels like when I was never paid for this thing that I was, whatever. Like this reminds me of how my sister treats me, how my mom treats me, how my foster mother treated me, whatever. Are there any ways I'm in a familiar role? I feel like the caregiver again, or I feel like the truth teller again, or I feel like the forgotten one again. Like, is this ringing a bell in my history? Which doesn't mean I literally am that, just because I feel that. So again, we're just knowing that activated feelings do not always tell the truth. They tell me something I need to know, but they may not be a clear read of the situation. I need to be open to the possibility that there's stuff I'm not perceiving. And what care does this familiar stuff need? Do I want to make myself my favorite meal from middle school because I feel left out like I felt in middle school? Do I want to, like, what do I need to be like, oh, shit, this reminds me of something really hard that's probably not fully grieved, right? Like, we live in an anti-grief culture. So, can I care for this ungrieved wound? And could doing so give me more compassion for the other people in the situation who have accidentally rubbed against my sore spot? Okay. So that is a little bit about what else is true. I'm just going to quickly peek at the chat. Ooh, I'm excited about Claudia's question about capacity. Don't let me forget to answer that one later. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to say a few things about resentment because it comes up so much in all the live events I've been having about love in a fucked up world. People are like, I'm so fucking pissed. Like my book events have been, COVID cautious with masking and um, air filters and other things that we've brought in. And people are like, I'm so pissed. Nobody does this in my community anymore. This is the first event I've been able to go to in so long. Like people have a lot of reasonable resentment about things like that. So I want to talk about that because resentment is like a very normal response to like how fucking shitty things are. I love this Nelson Mandela quote. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. I often heard the 12-step version before I heard the Mandela version. Resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick. So resentment is not, I'm not talking about anger. I'm talking about resentment where I'm like stewing on something. And a lot of times, what resentment looks like in our communities is, so we're having a reasonable response to like fucked up coercive systems, especially because we're working in wage labor systems. Even if you don't work or can't work, we're living in a system organized by wage labor. So resentment is one of our only like defenses to like capitalism, is like hating our boss or hating our job. So we're all very good at that. And that sucks when you're trying to do community work where you're actually like trying to be more forgiving and like, and also like change the conditions if you don't like them. Sometimes you can't change them at work, but sometimes we can change them in community work. So it's hard. A lot of us have resentment because there's like a lack of solidarity. Like the COVID example I gave, or like I've been fucking talking about the racism in this group or in this community for 25 years and no one's listening, or the transphobia or the ableism, like so reasonably frustrating. Just these ongoing patterns of marginalization, exclusion, and targeting. And the problem is that when we're resentful, it can feel empowering. This is what I'm worried about. So it can be like, I'm so pissed, I refuse to talk to the people I'm in the conflict with. A lot of people do this in our groups. Like a conflict is emerging in a group, and then I refuse to actually meet with other people in the conflict. And it can feel like, look at me, I'm standing up for myself, but it's really disorganizing. It can look like wanting someone else to apologize first. Resentment can really fuel that. I just had a really amazing conversation with a person who does really important movement work that I respect. She told me that she and her partner, when they were deciding to have a kid, made an agreement to apologize frequently and easily. That was the most important lesson they wanted their child to learn. Most of us are from families where authority figures never apologized, and schools and other spaces. So apologizing can feel like admitting fault, like too much, and like I'm going to be vulnerable. So everybody wants someone else to do it. So like I recommend reading about apology. There's some stuff in Love in a Fucked Up World, which you can get on the Anarchist Library. There's Mia Mingus's famous thing about apologies. Maybe someone can put that into the chat. Just learn like what's a good apology and what's not. Like it's not a good apology to be like, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's a good apology to say, I hear what you're saying. I can describe what my impact was. This is what I'm thinking about, how I might not do it again. Like, there's ways to apologize that are much more robust than what we've been taught. And just asking yourself, like, when was the last time you gave a good apology? And I'm not talking about, okay, some of us apologize constantly. Like if we say sorry a million times, that's not a grounded apology. If you're like, Dean, it bummed me out when you're late to the meeting, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm the worst ever. I hate myself. Like that's not satisfying. Like over accountability is not satisfying. Under accountability, it wasn't me, it's not my fault. Send the middle road. The like, oh, right sized. Okay, I'm gonna try to work on that. Thank you for telling me. A lot of us become unsatisfiable because we have these histories of pain, mistreatment, abuse, not being listened to. When I see this a lot, somebody brings concerns to a group, and then no matter what people in the group do, they're like dug in. They're like permanently the victim. So I think this is an important thing to look at. Like, do you forgive when people apologize? Do you find ways to forgive? There's a section in Love in a Fucked Up World about forgiveness that might be useful. Most of us have not had good chances to experience forgiveness because most of us have never been actually apologized to by people who fucked us over. We just break up or move out or quit the job or get fired. So actually, these are skills that really need support. And a lot of people, the resentment means I just turn and walk away, but then they leave stuff that they really loved and needed. So I'm just curious about how can we work with resentment? Maybe people want to share ideas in the chat. Like, how can we, like, yeah, resentment, we're not bad none of our feelings are bad, but resentment is like anger that, people say anger is the shortest feeling. So if you're still stewing on it, it's probably resentment. And then it's actually poisoning me to have this. It's not, so how do and it might ruin my enjoyment of the work, or my ability to be in it at all. Um, Bailey says, empowering myself with things I can do about it, naming it to the other person, playing. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, Recognizing and how scared and hurt I actually feel underneath. Yeah. Z says that they feel shame for resentment. And I think shame and resentment are both of these kind of like there's real feelings underneath, like really profound ones. And instead people sometimes talk about the shame trampoline. I'm gonna mention this because I have do a lot of work with my own shame and it's been really useful. So a lot of us have shame as a response. Like when we were children, there was conditions that were out of our control that were really stressful. And so we couldn't face how terrifying that was. So we believed that we actually could control them. So it just means I'm not good enough. If things are not happening right or if things are dangerous or scary, I'm not good enough. And so when I'm on top of the shame trampoline, I'm hearing all these messages in my head. I'm too much. I'm too loud. I'm disgusting. I shouldn't have done that. Everyone's going to find out how bad I am. Whatever. I'm jumping around the shame trampoline, basically misapprehending that I have control of a situation. What's underneath the trampoline is something like terror, despair, grief, fear, like a bigger feeling. And if I can find that feeling, I sometimes find the shame resolved. I think resentment also is on top of the trampoline, anxiety. These are all like cut off feelings turned into ruminations, seeking control. These are beautiful answers. Yeah, resentment is like anger and shame. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Recognizing that it may take a while to move through the feeling and giving myself space to do so. A lot of us, if we just thought our feelings were okay, we wouldn't act them out on other people. Like, oh, I'm full of resentment right now. Okay, is there any direct action I can take to share something that's concerning me? Is there anything I want to work on forgiveness for? Is there something I need to talk through with somebody about, like that I never talked through, that I, want to ask for an apology about or whatever? Do I need to forgive myself for something? Um, Jen says, I have so much grief about leaving things that I loved, though I usually couldn't change those cultures. Now, I try to be discerning about groups I join and how much energy I invest. Yeah, some of us leave really fast. Some of us stay too long. Some of us don't think it's possible to try to change a group. And so we never try, but we could have. Some of us try to change the same group forever. And it's like we're beating our head against the wall. We need to talk to our friends to figure this out. It's a really hard mix of things. Okay, there's so much more to read, but I'm just going to bring us through a few more slides before we go to Q&A. I don't have a ton of time for this, but I just want to like some of this you can find in some of my other online workshops, but perfectionism and procrastination are big generators of conflict, so I just want to mention them. And the other one that's a big generator is capacity. And I do have a whole workshop that on that. Maybe Bobby, maybe you can share that link again on the building capacity for mutual aid groups workshops. I have a thing about like how people talk about capacity, but let me just give you a few thoughts on this. Most of us are living with one or both, and most of us think we're not perfectionists. For years, I was like, I'm not a perfectionist. Everything I do is so sloppy. Look at this slide deck, you know? But like, that's perfectionism. You know what I mean? Maybe you can ring with that. Perfectionism and rigid judgment in our movements can mean like we are terrified of being canceled for our mistakes. That is really common, or terrified to try things. Or it can make us really bossy. Like it's like people being really bossy to each other in the group, like about the quality of like the handout or the zine or the chant or whatever. Um, I mean, at worst, it can mean we don't do the amazing shit we need to do because we're like, what if it's not perfect? Like our group is so concerned that we might be criticized that we don't like, do the incredible banner drop we had planned or the sabotage or whatever. Um, and procrastination show up differently for a lot of different people. So I'd recommend like thinking broadly about whether this might be impacting you. And it can be related to roles. Like some of us are afraid of being exposed as imposters, where I'm not radical enough, I'm not smart enough, whatever. Or, oh my God, everyone's going to see me, just like afraid of being seen. Or everyone's looking at me because I'm the most outspoken Black person in this campus, or I'm the most outspoken trans person in this campus. Pressures of leadership where suddenly you're like, oh fuck, if I make a single wrong move, I'm gonna be. Um, it can lead to difficulty prioritizing tasks and feelings of chaos or being spread thin. Like I sit down at my computer to do tasks for the group and I can't figure out which thing to do first, and I'm spending a ton of time on something that doesn't really matter. Like this very disordered relationship to work inside. So something that's really important to me, I just want to make sure to include about avoidance. I think avoidance is the dominant feeling in our society right now. Like everybody's just like, I can't even, like, don't make me do any adulting. Like everyone's like, I couldn't stand to cook. I couldn't stand to call my grandmother. I can't stand to like go on a date. I can't stand, like there's just a lot of like um can't even feeling, which is a very reasonable response to living in a coercive society in which if you don't do everything the way they want, you end up in prison or poor. Like it's, but I'm curious about how avoidance feels in your body. That's like a really important one for me. Like for me, avoidance is like I'm backing away, I'm turning my face to the side. I'm just like, oh, like I don't want to work on the spreadsheet. I don't want to talk to that person who I'm stressed out by in the group. What does avoidance feel like in you all's bodies? Um, there's so many good things here. Empty stomach, separation, squishing guilt down, dissociation, disconnection. People having feelings in their shoulders, dread, sleepiness. I hear that a lot. Feeling nothing, tight muscles, shallow breathing, collapsing chest. Um, yeah, these are heart drop. Yeah. So these are really common feelings. Um, and then the other feeling I want us to talk about is on purpose. So like when I'm like, I don't feel like doing something, but the other option would be for me, on purpose is like centered. I feel like my spine feels straighter. I'm leaning forward. I'm directionally forward, and I can feel my back. What does on purpose feel like for you all? Like some people might feel on purpose when they're like, I feel like the whole team is with me. Levity, someone says, strongly grounded through my legs, lightness. So a lot of people say mental clarity, buoyancy, focused, flow state, butterflies in my chest, dopamine, the sun, I'm having fun. Yeah. Like figuring out what this fiery in my core, heart energized, passionate, determined, feeling my feet on the ground, no brain fog. I love everything you guys are saying. So like one of the things I think we can do is actually cultivate on purpose, right? So like I had such a hard time writing Love in a Fucked Up World. I had so much shame, so much avoidance. So I like wrote myself a little letter about why it was okay for me to try to write this book. And I would like read it before I started working on it. And I would light a candle and I would imagine friends of mine who thought it was a good idea. We can do this with anything, and we can do it in the meetings or before we start a task. We can do it with others. We can be like, right. And if somebody in one of these meetings asked me once, like, how do I feel on purpose about my taxes? Shit that I really don't want to do. Like, I'm going to send money to the government. They're going to like do terrible war things with it. And the way I think you can do it with anything, you can be like, you know what? I'd rather pay them less money now than more money later. I don't want to go to jail about this. Whatever. Like you find a reason. You're like, I'm doing this for my freedom. I'm doing this so I don't pay them more money for their fucked up bombs. Like you just find your on purpose and it can really help to talk to other people about it. Last couple of things. This is from a workshop I sometimes do about capacity. And it's about procrastination and about overcommitting. And this is like literally what some people wrote in a meeting where we were using interactive slides. What messages do I hear in my head when I'm deciding to overcommit, when I'm taking on more things than I need? Again, this often leads to conflict because then we don't do the stuff. People say the same things over and over again. Nobody else will do it, or nobody else will do it right. Like like there could be a control thing, or or a guilt thing. Like I have so much privilege, I should do it. I'm, kind of like I blame myself. And then also a thing where it's like, um, oh, I lost the last one. Anyway, it's the same stuff. For me, it's been helpful to have people see that everybody has the same stuff go through their head. And I've done stuff like be like, okay, I can't if before I go into the meeting, I look at how much I can take on and not take on, and then I like tell myself, Dean, you can only take on two tasks for this meeting, or you can't volunteer for a task until three other people have spoken. Like just if I'm like me, which is that I'll in every meeting I want to take on so many tasks. I think one thing that drives me is that I want to be seen as caring and important. And it was very embarrassing to admit that to myself in investigating this. Like, I want to matter, and I don't think I matter on some fundamental level from childhood. And so I make myself matter by taking on more work. And that is not great when I take on so much that I can't do it well or that I'm hurting myself. So this is like something to think about. We don't have time to do this, but this question, like, are you guys welcome to answer it and look at each other's answers? Like, what would make you feel like you could be direct and clear when you cannot take something on, or when you've taken something on and you need to say, I can't actually do it? Because a lot of times people have a conflict because I said I would do it and then I didn't do it. And you're mad at me, for good reason, because that's hard. And so, like, if I can say, hey, you guys, I said I would do this, but I can't as soon as possible, that's actually so much more trustworthy and respectable. Um, Another question we don't have time for, but you could do this in your own groups. What gets in the way of me starting or completing tasks I agreed to? What happens with my procrastination personally? What would help? Should we buddy up? Should we all meet on Friday mornings on Zoom and do the thing we're most avoiding? Like, what can we do with that? Bobby, will you put in the chart this in the chat this chart? I just want people to look at it. We don't have time to talk about it because I really want to get to the questions, but this chart, it's in the book Mutual Aid. I just think it can be useful for some people um, as a way of thinking about the internal dynamics in how we're working, which ultimately lead to resentment, blame, flakiness, bossiness, all these things that create conflict. Um, the final things I want to say, this has been so helpful to me. It's like a Buddhist idea. I really like to remember this with conflict and with the difficulty in groups. Everything is imperfect. Everything is impermanent. This is really important. Like a lot of people, their first time out in organizing, they don't know that like there will be a million other moments like where we have these same problems. I'll be in other groups. They think they need to be supported extra because this is their first time out. It's like their first love affair. They don't know that this one isn't going to last forever. You know what I mean? And everything is impersonal. The idea that when you're yelling at me, it might not be entirely about me. It's a lot about you, and I can love you and care about the distress you're in, even though you're yelling at me. Um, And part of this is, can we imagine? I got this from Morgan Vasquez, who just was like, let's all read books about how to parent toddlers, because like that's who we all are. Like when we're upset, we're toddlers, and we need to both be loved and given boundaries about our behavior. Okay, I'm going to stop this and answer questions that the Shareable folks have gathered. And Bobby, if you want to put the slides into the chat, people can see them.
Yeah, thanks for all that, Dean. A lot to keep up with. Way too much for me to actually like hold for a single session. And so I'm really excited to be able to go back and look at the recording. We got a flood of
That's great
questions.
feedback. Thank you for that feedback. I
Yeah,
could go
yeah.
slower, do less.
We got a flood of questions, in the chat, but also people were DMing us with questions they didn't necessarily feel comfortable putting in the chat in front of everybody. And we have a very short period of time. So if Dean addressed your question to a certain extent during the presentation, then I'm going to maybe deprioritize some of those. I do want to give you a chance because you said you did want to come back to this one. You kind of addressed it. Folks, seeing a lot of people saying, I don't have capacity for this. And they don't want to get involved themselves in the conflict. And so questions of how do you know if it's really capacity or when it's kind of an avoidance or feeling as if the people that are in conflict are disposable in some way?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I mean, even just asking ourselves that question is a huge start. Just to say, what am I saying with capacity?
Yeah.
Like, as I think the thing in general in our movements where people are often like, I just a lot of groups I talk to, they're just like, we just stopped, nobody had capacity. And I'm just like, okay, all people across all time have done resistance where nobody got paid and everybody was like a peasant who was like, living under horrible conditions of colonialism, etc. So what's going on? Where is my capacity going? Like capacity hygiene is a question I have. Am I watching violent movies? Am I exhausting myself on social media? Am I doom scrolling? Like, and this no judgment, but just am I using substances in a way that is exhausting me? Like, where is it going? And can I do, this is my one fucking life. And things are like, we need each other so badly. How do I orient towards my purpose? And then, of course, yes, having boundaries about our capacities. I mean, some of us are sick, some of us are parenting, some of us are taking care of people who are dying. Like, but figuring out what's the most important. Do I have a job that is taking all my time that I actually think is not good for the world? Could I reduce my expenses, live collectively, and have more time for the movement? I mean, these are like really hard, big questions, but like, could there be more important questions? So I think also having like a buddy or a friend to talk to about it.
Mhm.
And then I think avoidance is a real thing. Like I was saying before, when people are like, oh, there's a conflict in the group, I'm kind of ditching out, I'm refusing to talk to anybody in the group. that's when we need to bring our most generosity to each other. Like our most, like, is it possible? Um, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Have another question here about kind of navigating issues of potential mental health within organizing groups. If you suspect or know if someone has a stigmatized diagnosis such as borderline personality disorder, um, and um, you know they are being perceived within a group as being lying, or maybe their reality is so different around conflict. How do you move through this, or do you have suggestions? You don't necessarily have all the answers, but do you have suggestions for how to move through this when those types of mental health issues are prevalent?
I love this person's sensitivity about noticing the stigma of these kinds of diagnoses because there is a really shitty trend in our communities right now of like memifying psychiatric terms and labeling each other
Yep.
as narcissists and stuff. So I really like, I first and foremost, like if we can avoid psychiatrizing each other and taking people, but yeah, we all like people do have really different experiences of reality, different like ways we react in conflict. Some of us yell a lot, some people never yell. Um, so I think, and I've organized with groups where there was a lot of people who were identified as psychiatric survivors and acted all kinds of countercultural and non-culturally normative ways and were fucking awesome organizers. So there's no reason that everybody can't be organizers. And we need more skills. And for me, what that looks like is that I believe my liberation is tied to becoming more capable of being with more kinds of people.
Yep.
So, like, can I become more flexible? Can I learn about what it's like to accompany more kinds of people? Which might mean that, like, somebody likes to call me every day and have a 2 hour conversation. And I'm like, you know what? It's 15 minutes every other day. Like, I've worked with so many kinds of people who had just all kinds of needs. And it doesn't mean I have to do everything everybody wants or be available for everything. But could I grow more capacity for solidarity with somebody who's different than what I've been told is normal or easy or like, God forbid, professional? We should not be acting professional in our groups. No, that is not a standard. You know what I mean? That's like a capitalist nightmare that's usually like racist and sexist and stuff. Certainly ableist. So yeah, I love this person's question. I think already has inherent in it a kind of compassionate, principled awareness.
Yeah. We got time for one more question. And this is a whammo, of course, but can you speak to how capitalism creates conflict among groups?
Yeah. Um, So many ways. I mean, part of it is that we act like we're at jobs
Yep.
when we're doing our work. And so most of our work is unpaid, or if you're working in a nonprofit, that's, you're doing it because of the passion, you're not doing it to get rich, right? And so then we act resentful, we feel trapped, we become individualist, people seek like fame and fortune in their organizing instead of to be of service. We think other people are disposable. There's just like I mean, it's really tied in with white supremacy and patriarchy and ableism. It's like and also all the shame, the whole shame cycle is a capitalist cycle about being perfect, having the perfect body, having the perfect hair, having the perfect eyelashes, having the perfect, you know what I mean? Like all of it is tied together and it's acquisitive. We treat other people as something we acquire and throw away. We socially climb. I mean, all of these values are normal. And I want us to like not hate ourselves for them, but be like, oh, it's fun to investigate them and try to transform them. I really want to invite people, if you have more questions like this, the Patreon is a place to directly, like you can directly DM with me there. You can post, we're having conversations about all these things. It's just patreon.com/backslash Dean Spade. This is exactly what I'm trying to talk to people about there. And also there's a place to meet more people who are trying to ask these questions. So thank you so much for hosting this, Tom, and being my example of my conflict partner throughout the workshop.
I know I was getting it today, but I can take it.
Yeah, you got
Well, thank you so much for this presentation. Please, everyone, let's give a warm hands of gratitude to Dean for coming joining for us. Dean didn't mention this, but it's very, very late where Dean is right now at night. I will not say where Dean is, but it's very late. So thank you for joining us for this session. We really appreciate it. The chat was amazing. There was so many awesome things that were said there. We captured the chat, resources, suggestions. We're going to be sharing those out after the session. There's also the link to the feedback form. We were talking about feedback is a gift. We need it too. So please take a few minutes and share. We read it, everything that people share, we read and we take into consideration. If you want to stay following, what we're doing, please find us, on the interwebs. We mentioned we've got a brand new website with a bunch of awesome resources. You can follow us on Instagram at shareable_gram, share-able on Blue Sky, and at shareable on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So that's a good place to start. I also, said at the beginning, this is a people-powered driven project. We were fortunate to get some small grant funding from Resist and Emergent Foundations to start this project. It's not nearly enough to cover it. This type of work is not typically funded by large foundations, as was mentioned. So the only way we've been able to make this series happen is that when we did the first 4 sessions earlier this year, we had 1,000 people contribute 5, 10, $20 to make it happen. Many people, as I mentioned earlier, have contributed to make this session happen, so we really appreciate it. If you want to help us continue to do cool shit like this, to build these tools, to put together toolkits and resources, please consider chipping in a few bucks. The link is in the chat right now. It really helps us as we go into the new year to know that we have the funds to be able to do more sessions like this. So again, thank you so much. And on behalf of our entire team at Shareable, until next time, take care of each other.